If you own a Gen 1 Mitsubishi Montero-Pajero-Shogun or a Dodge Raider like this one, and yours has the 2.6 liter Mitsubishi four-cylinder, the 4G54, also known as the Astron engine, well, odds are, if you haven't already, you're probably considering purchasing the Weber 3236 progressive carburetor to replace an aging and quite complicated Mikumi carburetor. And one of the things that you'll potentially want to do when converting to using this carburetor is also upgrading the fuel pump. The stocks system uses a mechanical fuel pump located right there. I believe that would be driven by a shaft inside the engine, which is sufficient. In fact, probably more pressure needed than you'd want for this Weber carburetor. I'm not going to get into the specifics of using the mechanical pump with the Weber because I don't have that set up. In fact, I've never had that set up. This truck actually came, like many of them that you'll find, already converted to use the Weber carburetor. Ideally, you'll be purchasing a complete kit to adapt this carburetor to the engine, and that means it'll come with the necessary adapter plate for the intake manifold, the necessary gaskets, the bracket for moving the accelerator cable into the right position, all that stuff. You kind of have a lot of different choices, to say the least, when it comes to electric fuel pumps. There are a lot of different electric fuel pumps for sale. Weber carburetors have a max PSI, basically, for fuel pressure they'll accept of about 3.5 pounds of 3.5 pounds per square inch of fuel pressure. So you want to get a pump somewhere close to something that has a maximum of that. Although you'll find most pumps, like the one currently in the truck, are between 4 and 6, and you should look at using a pressure regulator. Now, to be quite frank, this system as it is has never had a pressure regulator with that electric pump, and I've never had any really symptoms of fuel overpressure, and that's probably because this filter, which is taking the fuel coming in from the pump, filtering it, then sending it to the carburetor there, but also has a return, pushing it through a filter here, going back to the tank through the smaller line. And I think that takes care of a lot of excess pressure. And you should actually use that style filter. From what I've read and seen, these really help with vapor lock symptoms, which are particularly an issue for people using modern gasoline with ethanol, which tends to boil in the carb, I guess, easier. And this helps deal with those vapors that come about because of the fuel boiling. And generally, I haven't had that issue except on the most extreme of days. It's in the triple digits here in Arizona. And I think that's in large part due to having this. Plus, it's good you want a return circuit. The truck was designed to use a return circuit, so use it. But anyway, that's another thing to include in your fuel system setup for this is at least one filter coming off your pump, and having a return circuit for excess pressure. We are at the back of the truck with my legs facing out towards the rear bumper. You can see the rear axle here, just to give you a perspective. So here is a very common aftermarket inline fuel pump. You Google universal fuel pump at Amazon, you'll see a good jillion different listings selling this pump. And there's nothing wrong with it. Well, functionally it works, but it is hella noisy. And I'll turn the key so you can hear it running. Like I was saying about the noise of this pump, I'm going to turn it on quick. You hear that? Noisy as hell. No way am I going to drive around listening to that. And you can see here how I have it mounted up. There's the ports on the tank. The top one is actually the return. The bottom one is the feed, also known as the inlet on the pump side. And then the outlet of the pump goes to the factory inlet line. That's the 5/16 fuel line. The smaller, which I believe is 3/8 fuel line, that's the return. But I did not want to hack up the factory fuel lines. This is a rust-free truck with stock, pipes, so no need to hack that apart. So this is how I did it, and I just drilled a hole in that part of the body cross member and used a nice thick self-tapper bolt, and good to go. This works. Red power wires going to terminal inside the engine compartment that has positive battery connection, and then there's also a little ground there. So basically that's the setup you're going to have for any aftermarket fuel pump. Really the only difference is going to be the particular shape of the pump and whether it mounts vertically, horizontally, whatever. This style pump, I believe, kind of works in really any orientation, but this is really what you have to work with. This is not too hard of something to mount up. There's area to work here. I will say I did find it difficult to drill more than one hole, just because with the axle in the way, there's only so much room to get a reasonable sized drill in there. So I don't know, keep that in mind. But anyway, this is kind of your typical setup, regardless of what pump you have. Ideally, it's going to go back here, because as far as I know, from what I've read, pretty much any of these universal pumps, they prefer to push the fuel more than they want to pull, meaning they prefer to be closer to the tank, where they're only pulling a short distance before they're really pushing the fuel up to its destination at the carburetor. So here's the Carter pump that I ordered, and you can find it from most of the common hot rod parts houses like Jegs, Summit Racing. I actually got this one on Amazon because I got same day delivery. I paid about $50 US, although I think the typical price is around 70 from the other places. But anyway, this is the one. The reason I chose this because it has a stated max pressure of like 3.5 psi or 3 psi, something like that. And people were saying it actually, when they hooked it up to a pressure gauge, it was coming in around that, maybe up to 4. But I think within within that margin of error, 0.5 pound per square inch. And this also, the reason I bought it is I've heard that these Carter pumps have various designs. Some are more quieter than others, but they're quieter pumps. And this looks a lot like the pump that is in the Mercedes SL500. And that pump's pretty quiet. I mean, there's a little bit of whine there. You can hear it, but it's not like the loud chugging of the one I have now. So this is the complete kit you get with your pump. You have your fuel pump, fuel filter, strap mount, your fuel clamps, your terminal connectors, and I believe that's a thread cutting bolt for mounting it. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't really get much more simple. I mean, you mount it up, put the little spade terminals on your wires, and connect your fuel lines, and that's it. So this is not marked as far as inlet and outlet for the pump, like on the pump body, as far as I can tell. However, it comes with this fuel filter pre-attached, and the inward side of the filter is here. So therefore, this side, right, is connected to your fuel tank, because fuel is being pulled in through the filter, through the pump, out to the carburetor. One thing you'll want to do before trying to install this thing is mark which is the positive and which is the negative terminal using a Sharpie, because, well, these are marked, on the body of the pump. Good luck trying to see that when you're under the car trying to mount this up on the body or frame. I found that I needed to take off the fuel filter that was mounted up to the inlet side of the fuel pump, because with this added on, it didn't leave enough room for the existing line to attach. So I took this off the pump, and I'll show you in a minute how I got everything mounted up. But I gotta say, other than having to take this was a perfect fit, this pump. And now you can see how the pump's mounted up. Again, we're looking that way towards the rear bumper. And we got our inlet side going to the bottom port on the tank. Fits in nice there, no kinks. And that spot there where it connects to the pump, that's where I removed the filter because it would push that hose too far back. And I didn't want to have to go and trim that. So, and then the outlet, no problem, just a nice little loop right into the feed line, the bigger 5/16 line going to the fuel filter and then to the carburetor. And then you can see I just have the ground attached to a little screw going into, again, that little body cross member. And then I got the red power wire going to the black wire, which is actually the positive, going to the front of the truck to a port where the batteries, there's a key switched power, so you turn the key and it gets power. That's what that black wire is going to at the front of the truck. But I'm using, I don't know what you call those, I'll have to put it in the subtitles, that connector where you flip the little levers and insert each wire. But I really like those. They're nice for working in tight spaces, and avoids having to use crimps. And that way too, you can easily, like if I needed to swap a replacement pump, it's not too bad. The wiring is all modular. But in a moment I'll turn the key and you can just hear this pump is virtually silent compared to the other pump without the engine running. I mean, you can kind of hear it, just barely though. Hopefully I don't get copyright from music noise. Yeah, barely any noise. Took the truck for a drive. She's all warmed up. Fires right up just by bumping the key. Sounds good. Success.